Here we can see this particular part which is called as the Malpighian corpuscle flows down into PCT. PCT means proximal convoluted tubule. Unwanted substances for elimination. It also carries very important nutrients which is very important for the body functioning. Called oxytocin, which is also called as birth hormone, which is very important in females during the time of delivery, child birth. Hello everyone, welcome back to session 4 of this chapter 19 of your syllabus called Excretory Products and Their Elimination. Myself, B. Shobharani from the Department of Biology, Vidhyaashram Pre-University College, the Temple of Excellence. Hope you remember in my last session, we studied about the process of formation of urine. As we all know that ammonia, which is the nitrogenous waste, which is the byproduct of protein metabolism, is converted into urea in the ornithine in the liver by ornithine cycle. Thereon, ammonia is converted into urea in liver through a cycle called ornithine cycle. And this urea, which is a nitrogenous waste in human, is eliminated in the form of urine. And as we all know that the process of formation of urine takes place in the structural and functional units of kidney called nephron. The process of formation of urine in the nephron involves 3 very important processes. As we have already studied, the first one is called ultrafiltration, or it is also called as glomerular filtration. Second one is called tubular absorption, and third one is called tubular secretion. So now let us understand the ultrafiltration. As we all know that we have studied the structure of a nephron. Here we can see this particular part which is called as the Malpighian corpuscle. It is called as Malpighian corpuscle, or it is also called as renal corpuscle, where the ultrafiltration of urine takes place and the process of formation of the primary urine will take place in this particular part of the nephron called the Bowman's, that is the renal corpuscle or Malpighian corpuscle. So when the blood, as we already studied the structure here you can see the afferent arteriole, then here you can see the glomerulus. What is glomerulus? Already we have studied in the last session. Glomerulus is nothing but is tuft of blood capillaries. So when the blood enters glomerulus, both essential and non-essential materials are filtered along with large amount of water through minute pores present in the glomerulus under high pressure. So when the blood enters into glomerulus, both the essential as well as the non-essential materials are filtered along with large amount of water through a minute pores present in the glomerulus. Hope you remember that the cells that surround the space called the Bowman's capsule, there are cells called podocytes. So under high pressure. So the epithelial cells of the Bowman's capsule, that is called the podocytes, absorb water, glucose, amino acids, fatty acids, mineral salts, nitrogenous waste like urea, ammonia, and ions. Ions may be in the form of sodium ions, magnesium ions, calcium ions, etc. Thus, the filtrate that is formed in the Malpighian corpuscle or what we call it as the renal corpuscle is called as the primary urine, or it is also called as I said, it is also called as glomerular filtrate. Hence, ultrafiltration is a non-selective process. What do you mean by non-selective process? Both essential and non-essential minerals are filtered here. So that is why it is called non-selective process. Hence, ultra means what? Fine filtration. So when the blood enters into glomerulus, that is the tuft of blood capillaries, both essential and non-essential materials are filtered along with large amount of water through minute pores present in the glomerulus under high pressure. So the epithelial cells which surround the space of the Bowman's capsule, the cup-like structure or a bowl-like structure called Bowman's capsule, there are specialized cells called podocytes, so which absorb water, glucose, amino acids, fatty acids, mineral salts, nitrogenous waste like urea, ammonia, and ions. Ions may be in the form of sodium, magnesium, and calcium. So the filtrate that is formed in the Bowman's capsule or renal corpuscle is called as the primary urine. It is called the primary urine, or it is otherwise called as what? Glomerular filtrate. Hence, here the ultrafiltration, as I said, fine filtration is non-selective process because both essential and non-essential materials are filtered here along with large amount of water. Hence, ultrafiltration is called as non-selective process. Now, moving on to the next very important process of formation of urine, that is tubular reabsorption. So, first one was, formation of urine. Formation of urine involves three very important steps. So, we have already gone through ultrafiltration, or it is also called as what? Glomerular filtrate. And second one is called tubular reabsorption. Third one is called tubular secretion. Third one is called tubulus. So, as we have studied this, that ultrafiltration is non-selective process. But thereon, the tubular reabsorption will take place in the tubular reabsorption. So, the primary urine from Bowman's capsule, so that the very word itself will tell you. Tubular reabsorption means what is the tubular? So as you know, the nephron is divided into two very important units. One is called the renal corpuscle and second one is called the renal tubules. So already we have gone through renal corpuscle. That is ultrafiltration which is taking place in renal corpuscle. Now the renal reabsorption, that is the tubular reabsorption, takes place in the renal tubules, namely which comprises of PCT, then DCT, then Henle's loop and the CT, that is the collecting tube. PCT means proximal convoluted tubule, DCT distal convoluted tubule, and the U-shaped bent tubule called Henle's loop, and CT, that is the collecting tubule. Now let us understand how the tubular part of a nephron is involved in the process of reabsorption of the important mineral nutrients from the primary urine. So here you can see the tubular section here. So here the whatever is formed here, the urine is called as what? Primary urine, which is non-selective. So all important nutrients, minerals will be there in that. So later on, the process of reabsorption of important and the elimination of the ones which is not important, particularly like urea, will take place in the tubular reabsorption. Now let us understand the mechanism that is involved in the process of tubular reabsorption. So the primary urine. So what is primary urine? The ultrafiltrate that is formed in the first urine that is formed in the glomerulus, that is the glomerular, that is the renal corpuscle, is called as primary urine. So the primary urine from Bowman's capsule flows down into PCT. PCT means proximal convoluted tubule. The essential materials like H2O, like water, glucose, amino acids, vitamins, etc. are reabsorbed by brush border cells. As we know that the Bowman's capsule has brush border cells, which is called as BBC. That is, what is brush border cells? So, of PCT and secreted into the blood flowing in the peritubular capillaries. Hence, tubular reabsorption is a selective process, whereas ultrafiltration is a non-selective process. So this is a non-selective process. This is a non-selective process, whereas tubular reabsorption is a selective process. It is a selective process. So what happens in tubular section part of a nephron? The primary urine from Bowman's capsule flows down the PCT. So from here it goes to PCT, that is the proximal convoluted tubule. So what happens there? The essential materials like water, glucose, amino acids, vitamins, etc. are reabsorbed by brush border cells of PCT and secreted into the blood flowing in the peritubular capillaries. As we already studied, here you can see, this is the peritubular capillaries. Peritubular capillaries. So that is flowing in the peritubular capillaries. Hence, tubular reabsorption is called as what? Selective process, because there we have come across the essential materials are reabsorbed, right? Then thus, tubular reabsorption removes essential substances from the filtrate back into the blood, because the important essential substances should not be eliminated out through the urine. So it has to be reabsorbed by the blood, because only urea and little amount of water has to pass out through urine, but the essential substances has to be retained in the blood. So that process is done by the peritubular capillaries. So thus, tubular reabsorption removes essential substances from the filtrate back into the blood. Reabsorption takes place both by active and passive transport mechanism. So here it takes place through passive, means what? Against the concentration gradient, and active means with the expenditure of energy. So what is tubular reabsorption? The primary urine from Bowman's capsule flows down into PCT. Here you can see the important nutrients, how it is reabsorbed, and it is, see the arrow mark shows, the one which shows this side arrow mark, it is going back to the peritubular, that is the tubular part of the nephron, that is PCT, right? But the one which shows the arrow mark this side is, the important nutrients are going back to the, so what is found here and here? It is nothing but the peritubular blood capillaries. See, that is the reason, as we know that blood not only is involved in carrying the unwanted substances for elimination, it also carries very important nutrients, which is very important for the body functioning. So the primary urine from Bowman's capsule flows down into PCT. The essential materials like water, glucose, amino acids, vitamins, etc. are reabsorbed by brush border cells of PCT and secreted into the blood flowing in the peritubular capillaries. Hence, tubular reabsorption is a selective process. Thus, tubular reabsorption removes essential substances from the filtrate back into the blood. Reabsorption takes place both by active and passive transport mechanism. As the urine flows down in the descending limb of Henle's loop. Next, from the PCT, some of the essential elements are reabsorbed back and it is sent back to the peritubular capillaries. Then remaining, as the urine flows down the descending limb of, that is here, the descending limb of Henle's loop. As we know, this is called what? Henle's loop. That is the descending limb of Henle's loop. It is concentrated by losing water. As it flows in the ascending limb, the urine is diluted. So again, when it is going again back like this, urine is diluted. As we know, urine should not be too concentrated. So neither too concentrated nor too dilute. As we know, even if urine is too very dilute, it leads to a disease called diabetes insipidus, right? So as the urine flows down in the descending limb of Henle's loop, it is concentrated by losing water. As it flows in the ascending limb, the urine is diluted by losing salts. So this adjustment in concentrating urine is called counter current multiplier system. It is called as what? Counter current multiplier system. So as the urine flows down in the descending limb of Henle's loop. It is concentrated by losing water. As it flows in the ascending limb, the urine is diluted by losing salts. So this adjustment in concentrating urine is called countercurrent multiplier system. So this is what is happening in the second process of formation of urine, that is the tubular reabsorption. Now, the concentration of urine is controlled by antidiuretic hormone called ADH or vasopressin, that is by hypothalamus. So it is secreted by hypothalamus of brain and stored in the posterior lobe of pituitary gland. I think all of us know about a very important endocrine gland called hypothalamus. This hypothalamus is called master of master gland. Master of master gland. It is called master of master gland because it is as we all know, pituitary is called as a master gland. It controls pituitary, hence it is called master of master gland. And this endocrine gland produces two types of hormones. One is called oxytocin, which is also called as birth hormone, which is very important in females during the time of delivery, childbirth. And it also releases one more hormone called vasopressin, or it is otherwise called ADH. ADH stands for antidiuretic hormone. And this ADH is very much responsible for controlling water level in the urine. If not, excess of water is eliminated through urine, leading to a disease called diabetes insipidus, or it is also called as diabetes insipidus. You might have heard about one more, like sugar we call diabetes mellitus, but this is called diabetes insipidus, or it is also called as water diuresis. And if vasopressin and and oxytocin is received by the posterior pituitary As we know, pituitary is divided into two parts. One is called anterior pituitary or adenohypophysis. The other one is posterior pituitary or neurohypophysis. And the anterior pituitary produces the hormones of its own kind, like FSH, LH, GH, MSH, melanocyte stimulating hormone. But the posterior pituitary or neurohypophysis does not produce the hormones of its own kind. Instead, it receives these two hormones of the hypothalamus. Hence, these two hormones which is received by hypothalamus by the posterior pituitary, they are called as neurohormones. Right? So and particularly, as I said, oxytocin has a great role to play in females during childbirth. Oxytocin is produced only in females. But in case of vasopressin is produced both in males and females. It is received by the posterior pituitary by both the male and the female, because it is very much important in controlling the water level in the urine. So the concentration of urine, as I said, too much of the urine should not be too concentrated, not too very dilute. So the concentration of urine is controlled by antidiuretic hormone, that is ADH or vasopressin. ADH, as I said, it is secreted by hypothalamus of brain and stored in the posterior lobe of pituitary gland. Hyposecretion. What do you mean by hyposecretion? Hyper means more secretion. Hypo means less secretion. So hyposecretion of ADH results in the formation of dilute urine. As I said, if ADH is not produced, then dilute urine will be eliminated. And that is again a disorder of the excretory system, which is otherwise called diabetes insipidus, or it is called water diuresis. Right? Then this condition is also called diabetes insipidus. The hypersecretion of ADH. What will happen? Hyposecretion will lead to dilute urine. Hypersecretion of ADH will lead to concentrated urine, and is called antidiuresis. So it is called water diuresis. Here it is called antidiur. Hope you have understood the mechanism of what is the role played by ADH or vasopressin, that is released by the hypothalamus, received by the posterior part of the pituitary. So the concentration of urine is controlled by antidiuretic hormone ADH or vasopressin. ADH is secreted in the hypothalamus of brain and stored in the posterior lobe of pituitary gland. Hyposecretion of ADH results in the formation of dilute urine called diuresis or water diuresis. It is called a diabetes insipidus. The hypersecretion of ADH, more secretion of, see, both are not good. Hypo is also not good and hyper also is not good. So the hypersecretion of ADH results in the formation of concentrated urine called antidiuresis. So what is the process of tubular secretion? As we know, as we have already studied that, it takes place in the region of DCT, that is distal convoluted tubule, where it adds non-essential materials from the blood into the filtrate. So as the filtrate passes through this tubule, as it passes through the tubule, the cells of tubule secrete additional waste into the filtrate. So these secreted wastes are in the form of what? Potassium ions, hydrogen ions, ammonia ions, creatinine and other waste materials. Thus, tubular secretion eliminates certain unwanted materials, and it also controls what? pH of blood, and maintains pH of 7.3 to 7.4, salt balance, etc. And to maintain the normal pH of blood, the cells of DCT also secrete what? Hydrogen ions, so that it can maintain the pH of the urine or the filtrate. As a result, urine becomes acidic. Hope you have understood all the three very important steps that are involved in the process of formation of urine, namely the ultrafiltration or glomerular filtration, which takes place in the renal corpuscle or malphizian corpuscle, then the tubular reabsorption, which will take place in the PCT, and the tubular secretion, which takes place in the DCT. Now, let us understand the summary of urine formation. So, finally, we have come across the process of formation of urine after undergoing three very important steps. That is, step number 1 called the ultrafiltration or glomerular filtration, step number 2 called tubular reabsorption, and step number 3 called tubular secretion. Finally, how the urine is formed. So, the urine formation takes place in the nephrons of the kidney, as we have already studied. See, here you can see the Bowman's capsule filtrate passes through the peritubular capillaries, then ADH will regulate the water content in the urine, then the urine is excreted. So blood with reabsorbed substances. So here you can see point number 1 is what? Filtration from blood into nephron, that is called glomerular filtration. Reabsorption filtrate into blood, that is point number 2. It is called tubular reabsorption. Tubular secretion, this is called tubular secretion from blood into filtrate. So reabsorption of water under the effects of ADH. So finally, the urine formation, as you see in this picture, takes place in the nephrons of kidney. It involves 3 steps. They are as follows. Tubular filtration, it takes place in the Bowman's capsule of the nephron. The volume of the afferent artery bringing in blood into the glomerulus is much more than the volume of efferent artery, which takes out blood from the glomerulus. So the urine formation takes place in the nephrons of kidney. It involves 3 steps. They are as follows. As we know, tubular reabsorption, it takes place in the filtration. Tubular filtration, it takes place in the Bowman's capsule of the nephron. The volume of the efferent artery bringing in blood into the glomerulus is much more than the volume of efferent artery, which takes out blood from the glomerulus. Due to the increased inflow of blood filtration, pressure builds up in the capillaries of the glomerulus. So, due to the increased inflow of blood, what will happen? There is a pressure created, filtration pressure, which builds up in the capillaries of the glomerulus. So, as a result, water, urea, glucose, amino acid, salt, and many other substances are filtered in the Bowman's capsule. However, substances with molecular weight of more than 1000 can't be filtered. So thus, due to the increased inflow of blood filtration pressure, inflow of blood, filtration pressure builds up in the capillaries of the glomerulus. As a result, water, urea, glucose, amino acids, salts and many other substances are filtered in the Bowman's capsule. However, substances with molecular weight of more than 1000 cannot be filtered. Hope you have understood the concepts of the three very important steps that are involved in the process of formation of urine, namely the ultrafiltration or glomerular filtrate, where the process of formation of the primary urine takes place. Thereon, the primary urine passes on through the PCT, where tubular reabsorption will take place, which is non-selective process, and thereon it moves to the tubular secretion, which takes place in DCT, which is a selective process. And we have also studied about the role of ADH, how important it is in regulating the water level in the urine. So I'll be back in the coming session with yet another interesting concepts of this chapter. Till then, goodbye and thank you.